use the running attack to set up the pass and the reverse. We know how much he loves to run draw plays. That used to be one of the ways they would kill teams with spurls. They even used it with PT a lot. But you can't run those plays if you can't get the defense to bite. Those counter plays don't work if there's nothing to counter. And so for me, that's one of the things I'm keeping an eye on is, can Peyton and can Mickey and Jeff give Peyton the tools to do what he really wants to do, which is a death by 1,000 paper cuts offense. Doesn't matter what you pick, I'm going to kill you with it.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing with this, and this is one of the counter arguments that I bring up. Yes, I'm 100% in agreement with everybody that typically when you're winning, you get more opportunities to run. But to your point about Sean Payton, how'd you word it? Giving up on the run, here's what you have to understand about defense is typically you're going to see more of a base defense in the first quarter than any other quarter because the defensive coordinator is going to wait to adjust to your plan. So you're going to see more 7-man boxes, more 8-man boxes, and less things like nickel unless a team purposely is coming in against you. I remember, I think 2 years ago, Atlanta, both games they played us, they used a nickel base against us. So unless a team decides to come out from the jump and run that, you're typically going to have a real hard time running the football. And you can see with the Saints this year, they're averaging about 3.5 yards per carry in the first quarter. After that, you're looking at 4.5, 5 yards a carry because it takes a lot longer to get started. So you can't give up on it. I realize Sean Payton is the hit you hard, hit you fast type of guy. And sometimes he's going to lose track of that himself. But there's a reason Sean Payton always says he has to get back to the run game and he has to recommit. It's not because he thinks that his passing attack isn't as good. He just knows, and we know, and I know you know, I'm just adding this point for further emphasis, that you amplify your passing ability with that. Drew Brees has his best numbers as a passer in deep routes when he has a better rushing game. It's quantifiable, and it's in every advanced analytics going back to 2006. When he has a quality rusher, he's able to get off those passes in the second and fourth quarter better than when he doesn't. When Ingram has got 10 carries and 25 yards because Sean Payton gave up on it, or Hightower has it, whoever, whatever name you throw out there, you're going to find Drew Brees having a lower passing percentage. The Saints offense relies heavily on play action. Not that they do it every play, but it's a big component. So for that, you can't have Sean Payton. You can't let him give up on it because every team in the NFL is basically going to try to hit you the hardest in the first quarter to find out what your plan is, to probe you, and then base off that. So if you come out running, they're going to plan against the run. And then you go over the top on them. If you come out passing 3 straight passes, guess what? They're bringing out nickel and dime the next series. And unless you decide to run draw against it and you don't, counter-react. And we've seen Sean Payton, he tries to stick to his plan regardless, his 15-set plays. He never seems to deviate from them. That's a problem I have with him. Sean, I know, his phone was dying, actually. So, Sean, go ahead and give yourself another plug. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can follow you. And I've had just a real pleasure having you on the show with me and Bryan, man.
No, man, real treat, man. You guys are dropping some knowledge and fun podcast, man. I'd love to do it again. And again, intelligent listeners, intelligent hosts, a lot of fun. You can catch me on Twitter, FOX, the number 4, ESPN 977, Fox 4, ESPN 977. I'm on every day, Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 Central Time, ESPN977.com. If anybody's listening in Northeast Louisiana, 97.7 on your radio dial, go to your Google Play Store, download the app. It's free. Google ESPN 977. Again, ESPN977.com. Click on it live or go to our Facebook page. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways to listen to it now. Facebook.com. Go to ESPN 97.7, the one in Louisiana, not Huntsville, Alabama. And we do Facebook Live every day as well. And if we're not talking Saints, you can always call in, change the topic, and we'll talk about Saints. It's a call-in show. I was inspired, grew up listening to Buddy D, and I try to go by his formula. We have a lot of fun. And again, people are shocked, Deuce. We were just talking about it. You've lived up here. Didn't even realize what you had in your backyard. We're the biggest sports station in the state of Louisiana up here in little old Northeast Louisiana.
Yeah, man. Once again, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. I know, Bryan, I hope you're still there. You got quiet on me, man. It's you of all people go quiet. That's completely unheard of. But we do have a question from a very special Miss Judy, who has joined us before. What you got today for us, Miss Judy?
Well, I was just wanting your thought or everyone's thoughts on Cadet, like we were talking about, or y'all were talking about the running game and how he used to use Pierre in that position. And I was just wondering what y'all thought. I think Cadet is fitted for what his role is now.
That's why I'm glad Miss Judy called. That's what I was waiting on, Deuce. I was just going to sit and wait on my turn to step in, man. First of all, thanks to Sean for joining us tonight, man. I mean, great insight. And definitely, if you guys are out there, make sure you check him out up there at ESPN for the Monroe area, man. So that's really, really glad to have him on today. But back to Miss Judy's question about Tavares Cadet, which is where I kind of was going to go once the air cleared, as far as what's up with the Mark Ingram and the running game and stuff like that. Well, Miss Judy, to answer your question, I think Tavares Cadet is serviceable at best. But I can guarantee the minute Sean Payton can find somebody else that can take his spot, Tavares Cadet will be former New Orleans Saints Tavares Cadet. Not the first time it's happened. It won't be the last, because Tavares Cadet fills a role that Sean Payton needs very much. But unfortunately for him, he's been trying to replace it with bargain basement type of guys. It's almost like saying, well, you got Kellogg's and then you got Thrifty Made. Well, Reggie Bush and Darren Sproles, they were Kellogg's. Tavares Cadet is Thrifty Made. Ain't nothing wrong with it if you can season it up, put a little butter on it, a little salt and pepper, make it taste good. But you can't, at the end of the day, Thrifty Made is Thrifty Made. And you can't, no matter what you do to it, it will never taste as good as the original. Same thing with Tavares Cadet. He is a serviceable running back. He fills a role. He's the pass catching guy. He's the slot out guy. He's basically the poorest of poor men's version of what Reggie Bush and Darren Sproles can do. But believe it when I say it, in order to see Sean Payton offense at top form, and if you've noticed over the last past couple of weeks, the minute Mark Ingram started running the ball harder, he also started catching the ball more. There was more room for him to operate. If I had to compare Mark Ingram to somebody, I wouldn't compare him to Deuce or anybody like that. Mark Ingram is going to fill the role that Pierre Thomas left, which means Tim Hightower has to fill the role of a guy that used to play for the Saints called Mike Bell. He has to be that big physical running back that comes in, and when the defense is just can't take any more, that's when he starts pounding them. And then there's the Tavares Cadet role, which is going to be filled by maybe Daniel Lasco or maybe a draft pick that's up and coming. And if you could imagine a guy like, Deuce and I have talked about on the show plenty of times, a guy like Christian McCaffrey out there at Stanford. And I know, Deuce, he's a white boy, and you're kind of crazy about white boys and running back. But as I said in my Remember the Titans voice, that's a bad white boy. If you could imagine him in the Saints offense, it'll be just like having Darren Sproles and Reggie Bush. And that's when you'll see guys like Tavares Cadet get weeded out, because there'll be no need for him to be on the roster.
Let me throw this out there. One, Cadet actually has done more than I expected. He ended with almost 300 yards receiving, but I think two players in particular have really pushed him out in a lot of ways, and that's the fact that, as Brian alluded to, Tim Hightower and Mark Ingram combined for, over 500 yards receiving. And if you go back to the Reggie Bush days, if we're talking about that style of receiver out of the backfield, he used to average right around 400 yards out of the backfield. Now, in our memory, because he was such an explosive player, we think it was more than that. But in reality, it wasn't. So because Ingram and Hightower have been able to pick up that load, there just hasn't been as much of a need to put Cadet in there on third down just as a receiving back. And the other issue you run into with Cadet is when he comes in, he's not running the ball. He ran the ball 4 times all season. So there's not really this, man, what's going to happen? We got to cover this guy. Whereas Mark Ingram in the first game against Carolina Panthers lined up in the backfield, and then when he went out wide, Mark Ingram out wide, Luke Kuechly, of all people, followed him. And I'm going to disagree with Brian there. I think Mark Ingram matches up more towards Deuce McAllister than he does Pierre Thomas, because I still think Pierre Thomas was a better receiver. Mark Ingram is a better runner than Pierre Thomas. Y'all can hate me all you want. He's a better runner. But I think it's just a combination of those two people, because Tim Hightower has come in, he's defied the odds, he's the great story, and he's done so well coming back in the NFL. You just don't really have a need for Cadet. And a hush falls the crowd.
I just see this year, I see Cadet in a different role than he was before. I don't think he can run the ball like Hightower and Ingram. But I think since he started being used this year, I think he's he's not great, like you said. He's serviceable, but I think he's better suited, kind of like the whole Anthony discussion. He maybe they were asking him to be something he's not. I think he's better suited for this role. He's made some very smart plays in several different games. Very smart.
He's just one of those guys who it's nice to have, but you don't really need. I think is the best way, and I don't mean that in
you put in that role. You're talking about a Lasco or a draft pick or a free agent.
Well, to be completely honest, I don't think you need Cadet at all. But if you had to put anybody, I think Lasco is that guy that was drafted, if you watch his college film, to be that Cadet-type player with the ability to also rush. I mean, but I think with the two guys that you have, based on what they did this season, you don't really need Cadet at all. I mean, he's not a feared X-factor type player. I mean, yeah, he can make some receptions out of the backfield. But, I mean, it's just not enough for me to place him. He's not even a third down running back because he didn't consistently come in on third downs. He comes in on random drives, which I guess helps you out because the defense doesn't really game plan against him. But also you run to the fact that nobody fears him, where somebody fears an Ingram receiving and running. Somebody fears a Hightower receiving and running. I just don't really think he has a place anymore. And I've talked about this specifically last week. The offense that the Saints ran 2009 and 2011 is not the same style of offense we run now. The offense has changed. A lot of the receiving routes and stuff are the same. But, I mean, if you go back and look, we run a lot more things like the pistol formation, single back. We're now a zone blocking offensive line instead of a man power block offensive line, which is what we won the Super Bowl with. The entire offense has adjusted to the times. So a guy like Cadet, who maybe back in the 2011 days would have gotten more targets, would have seen more time in the backfield, just isn't going to get used as much in today's Sean Payton offense.
I think that's another part of the problem as well, Ms. Schutte, is the fact that when you see Tavares Cadet now, it's usually not a good thing. Because usually when you see him, the Saints are either down or up by, and I mean, they haven't been very much up by 10, but they're usually either down by 10 or up by 10, and they're trying to play catch-up. And Tavares Cadet just happens to be a better option as far as running routes. Tavares Cadet is listed as a running back, but he's more or less a receiver. Right. So I think that's the problem when you see him now. It's the idea that you already know the Saints are in trouble if Tavares Cadet is getting the majority of the snaps, because that means they have to throw the ball a whole lot. So I think that's part of the problem.
Let's bring in, we got John S., who actually writes with me at Canal Street Chronicles. What do you think about Cadet, man? Threw you on the spot.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. Cadet, he's the Diet Coke of running backs. You don't ask for him. You're not real happy that he's there, but it is what it is.
Wow. Man, I really hope some players never listen with some of the people I have come on and talk. My goodness.
Man, I will say this. He's a different guy than he was before he went on his journey to San Francisco, to New England. He's a capable receiver. I just feel like the Saints can get more production out of that spot, whether that means looking at a free agent like Andre Ellington, looking to the draft for someone you mentioned like Christian McCaffrey. I just feel like that's an element the offense is kind of lacking is that really stout satellite back who can come in your 2-minute drill, who can come in on third down and catch passes out of the backfield and make plays with the ball in his hands.
Well, I think really because I like this trend that we're on and talking about it, because I think it's important for people to really think about this. Don't take my word for it. I mean, if you've got NFL Game Pass, which is a great thing to have, go back and watch some of this, the early games. I think NFL Game Pass goes back about 5 years. But if there's a team that this team this year reminded me more of, because we were the number one offense, we were the number two scoring offense, but this team reminded me more of the 2006 Saints than it did the 2011, 2013, 2009 high-flying power attack. I mean, Drew threw 5,000 yards. I mean, I'm not saying the passing game started to slouch, but if you just look at the style back when we had Mike Carney, who has now got his own comparison that we have at fullback that is done really well for us. If you look at the Deuce McAllister and Mark Ingram type thing, if you look how we've used guys like Cadet and Hightower as receivers, because combined, I think that they're looking at around 500 yards combined, 450.